Season's greetings. I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, and when I'm not spending all of December making a half-hour-long video about the Thing film series, instead of just waiting until January to do it so I can release a Christmas video on time, I'm here at the Wolfula reviewing movies. Yeah, I ain't fooling anyone with the holiday facade. Christmas time has long since passed as of this video's release because that damn Thing video was a major time sink I didn't expect, but screw it. People's Christmas decorations aren't even coming down until mid-February, so I might as well pump out a Christmas special that YouTube commenters will still complain is late because, well, they're YouTube commenters. It's their full-time job to bitch about free content. Merry Christmas, YouTube commenters, and a Happy New Year. Anyway, I'm gonna review Black Christmas, or, as it was initially known in America, Silent Night, Evil Night, the first ever Christmas horror movie. Okay, Black Christmas probably isn't the first Christmas horror movie, but I'm most likely not going to review whatever came before it, so for all intents and purposes, it is the first Christmas horror film. A horror film centered around what is technically a Christian holiday is a tip-off that by the 70s, horror was starting to mature, branch out, and tackle more subversive subject matter than monsters, aliens, and man's natural fear of giant insects. I mean, what if ants were big instead of small? I'm freaking you out, aren't I? I mean, they're not big, but it'd be pretty scary if they were. Right? Just think about it. Black Christmas, alongside the classic Texas Chainsaw Massacre, was released in 1974, a time before Halloween kicked off the slasher craze. Black Christmas is something of a proto-slasher, and like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, has some of the calling cards that slasher films would adopt, but even more so with Black Christmas. Black Christmas was an early pioneer in the structures and concepts that Halloween would later refine and popularize. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. Black Christmas concerns a sorority house during Christmas time. Sexy, but unfortunately, this is not a Playboy cartoon depiction of a sorority, and I'm just gonna put this out there right away. No nudity in this film. None whatsoever. Not even a pillow fight. So, gratuitous but highly necessary nudity wasn't established yet with Black Christmas. Well, I suppose a film still has the potential of being good without a pillow fight. Anyway, on to the conflict. The sorority periodically receives phone calls from a guy they've dubbed the Moaner.
It's him again! The Mona!
Which incidentally is my nickname at Panera Bread. I really love their food. The Moaner's calls are deranged and really sexually explicit, a predecessor to Xbox Live chats. So if you're watching this in public without headphones, too late!
Let me lick it. Lick it. Lick it. Let me lick your pretty piggy cunt.
This was back in the days before the internet when you had to actually call a woman in order to threaten them sexually. Thank you, Al Gore, for changing the game.
Want my fat cock too?
Oh, why don't you go find a wall socket and stick your tongue in it? That'll give you a charge.
I'll stick my tongue up your pretty pussy.
You fucking creep!
I'm going to kill you.
The thing is, the Moaner isn't just a bored prank caller with issues. No, the dude's spending his Christmas inside the sorority. I think you can see where this is going.
Who is it?
Now, Claire here's death isn't just a throwaway killing to raise the body count. No, no, no! Claire's breathless, bag-headed corpse becomes something of a mascot for this movie, seen throughout the film rocking back and forth in a chair by a window in the sorority house. Claire's death also comes with consequences. You know, in most slasher films, you don't see the parents of the victims. It's just not something that's usually addressed. The impact that Jason's dozens of murders per film might have on a family or even a whole community. Think about it, 3 people get murdered? That's on the news. When Claire's father comes to pick his daughter up for the holidays and finds she's nowhere in sight, his character starts out just worried and frustrated. Obviously, the guy assumes that the sorority with its alcoholic Margot Kidder has corrupted his proper Christian daughter.
I didn't send my daughter here to be drinking and picking up boys.
Hell, even the house mother, Mrs. Mack, finds a way to drink at any given moment. And I mean any moment. Anywhere, anytime.
Jesus, I wouldn't wear this to have my liver.
But with Claire not showing up even in the night, her boyfriend having no idea where she is, and with a 13-year-old girl missing, Claire's father gradually evolves from concerned parent to genuinely afraid, imagining what could have happened to his daughter. It's pretty heartbreaking, especially since he never gets closure by the film's end. Black Christmas was one of the early slasher films, so it has much of what later films would adopt, but it doesn't just check some boxes and call it a night. This is a film that doesn't know what subgenre it would later belong to, and largely just does its own thing. Black Christmas is a very human slasher movie. The characters are front and center in this film, and are very memorable.
Well, we decided that we would go skiing for a few days. You?
Yeah, and I've been looking forward to this for 3 weeks. Bitch.
Isn't Santa naughty?
The survivor girl is Jess, played by Olivia Hussey, whose one problem isn't finding a date while being a perfect virgin or whatever. No, Jess is pregnant with her boyfriend Peter's child and doesn't want to go through with it, but Pete ain't down with no abortion.
Don't you ever consider anyone but yourself?
I've thought this out very carefully, and I know what I'm gonna do.
I know, that Zootopia comic totally ripped this movie off. But it's a very raw, human story. It's not like a typical slasher film where the lives of young people are just fun and games until a killer shows up to ruin things. Things are already ruined. They just get ruined-er. And this abortion subplot creates tension between Jess and Peter throughout the film. Hey, wait a minute. That's the dude who played David in 2001: A Space Odyssey. What the fuck? How do you go from playing an astronaut in a Kubrick film to playing a college student in a Canadian slasher flick? Dude is like 38 in this movie.
We could be married. You could still do anything you wanted to do.
Peter, I don't want to marry you.
Even the minor characters have their times to shine. Black Christmas has an unexpectedly great cast with some familiar names you'd know today, like John Saxon surprisingly playing a police lieutenant.
A high school girl's been murdered. Mr. Harrison's daughter is missing. And now at the house where she lives, the other girls are getting obscene phone calls.
Andrea Martin, who would go on to a prominent role in sketch comedy show SCTV, even playing the house mother in that shitty Black Christmas remake Best Not Spoken Of.
Will you be okay if I go up to bed?
Yes, of course.
And, of course, Margot Kidder, who you should know as Lois Lane, delivering the most memorable non-killer performance in the film as Barb, a girl who speaks her mind about pretty much anything with a drink in hand.
Could that be one person? No, Claire, that's the Mormon Tabernacle Choir doing their annual obscene phone call.
Barb is one of those people that talks shit about everyone behind their backs and fucks with everybody, even the cops.
Could you give me the number at the sorority house?
It's, Fellatio 20880. It's a new exchange, FE.
I know it's weird that this adult man doesn't know what fellatio means, but this was before Urban Dictionary was a thing.
I know. Something dirty, ain't it?
Barb isn't just some drunk, chatty Kathy, though. She actually has some dimension to her when she feels responsible for Claire's supposed disappearance.
You think it's my fault, don't you? Barb, stop it. Don't shit me. That's what you're all thinking. Why don't you just come right out and say it? You think that I drove her away. And if she's dead, you're gonna blame me.
It's an unexpected moment of clarity for a character in a slasher movie. Again, later films would rely on simple stereotypes, so a mean girl character like Barb would never change, all the way to the grave. Speaking of which, what about Black Christmas's killer? Well, he's difficult to talk about. The guy's not exactly the kind of slasher villain that you put on a cover, on account of you never see him. You see, Black Christmas was inspired by the urban legend The Babysitter and the Man Upstairs, which wasn't a cliche yet. The twist of that story, of course, was that the killer making threatening calls to the babysitter was in the house the entire time. Spoiler alert, a killer was also in the back of your car the whole time, and the truck driver was just trying to warn you. The babysitter legend is the story story that all slasher films are predicated upon. A killer lurking in a place you're familiar with. And Black Christmas is the best direct adaptation of it. Like I said, you never see Billy, the killer of Black Christmas. The guy is always obscured by shadows or off camera. Most of the time, Billy's scenes are handled through POV shots. Commonplace for horror today thanks to Halloween, but this was a new thing in Black Christmas. Except Black Christmas's use of POV is integral to Billy's character. His identity is never revealed all the way to the end. The only backstory for Billy is what he mentions during his ramblings over the phone.
No, really, no.
Billy's voice was the product of many, but Nick Mancuso is the one who was credited, delivering eerie, genuinely disturbing phone calls that feel real because they were most likely improvised. The calls are the scariest part of the movie because it's an unfiltered look inside the mind of a killer who could be practically anyone.
I know you're Billy. Your answer is Billy.
Who are you? For God's sake, what are you doing?
Billy mostly preys on women, naming their corpses after his supposed sister Agnes.
Agnes, don't you tell what we did, Agnes.
And is quite likely a burgeoning threat to Bedford, as it's implied that he killed a 13-year-old girl and raped a woman weeks earlier.
But you know that town girl was raped a couple of weeks ago. Darling, you can't rape a townie.
Billy's backstory is realistic because it's not explicit. The guy isn't some mastermind taking credit for shit. Everything about him is just pieced together over time. Billy should be up there with the likes of Jason and Michael as an iconic villain, but unfortunately, you can't put a guy on t-shirts if you don't know what he fucking looks like. I'd rather not think of him as that Bart Simpson looking motherfucker. Black Christmas isn't all just POVs and phone calls, though. It's got its fair share of kills with a less is more approach, but it's also a very suspenseful film because it's well established where Billy is in relation to his potential victims. The dramatic irony is strong with this film. Black Christmas is based very much in reality. Despite the movie having multiple characters and locations, Billy never leaves the sorority house. The guy's not Jason Voorhees teleporting all over town to kill people. We know exactly where he is, but the characters are oblivious to it. Anticipation is built because a lone character could die any moment they're in the house, especially on the higher floors, and the film will even use this knowledge to mislead and misdirect, sometimes via some early jump scares.
Peter, Jesus, you scared the hell out of me.
Now, the film is called Black Christmas and takes place around Christmas, but what does Billy even have to do with Christmas? Billy's not some guy in a Santa costume. He never even mentions Christmas. Well, again, it's realistic that Billy isn't themed like some easy-to-market superhero slasher character, but also, having this horrible stuff happen incidentally around Christmas just heightens how shitty it all is. This massacre is Christmas-ruining stuff. It's Grinch level without stealing any shit. The town is even called Bedford, pretty close to Bedford Falls in It's a Wonderful Life. So the title is apt. It's a Black Christmas, dealing with a real horror during Christmas. A film about a guy ruining Christmas, not about Christmas literally ruining other people's lives like pretty much every other Christmas horror flick. Also, I'm glad this movie took the title Black Christmas, or else we'd be seeing a Medea movie with that fucking name. Okay, spoilers. Gonna be giving away the very end of Black Christmas. Enter the time code to spare yourself. Through very primitive 1970s phone tapping, Jess is alerted to the fact that Billy is indeed inside the house.
The caller is in the house.
The calls are coming from the house.
What a shocker! Despite this info, Jess still tries to play hero and rescue anybody upstairs, which is admirable, but it obviously doesn't go well for her. When Jess is finally cornered in the basement, she's met in the window not by Billy, but by the familiar Peter, who's really quick to break glass. Jesus! Now, Jess had long suspected Peter of being the killer, obsessed with Jess and driven to a violent rage over the chance of losing his child, but truthfully, as the police leave a sleeping Jess in the same sorority house where the murders occurred, it's revealed that Peter was just a clever red herring and that Billy is still in the house.
Agnes, it's me, Billy.
The police didn't even check the whole house before calling it a night. Typical Canadian police, am I right? This is some cold, real shit. And it's even more chilling when the phone starts to ring once again. Could be a telemarketer, though. Black Christmas is a pretty essential slasher film, as one of the earliest, and is a massive evolution of the subgenre, with its threatening phone calls, POV shots, and even some jump scares. It's a great movie that holds up today beyond just being an influential chapter in horror history, but I do feel like there's a lull in the middle where Billy doesn't do a whole lot beyond making some more calls, and the score by Carl Zitterer is pretty typical. I give Black Christmas a David from 2001 out of Fellatio Street. You know, the funny thing is, Bob Clark, the director of Black Christmas, went on to direct another different kind of Christmas horror film called A Christmas Story, which is actually my favorite Christmas movie. I mean, I can relate to it. Why do you think I wear these sunglasses with one lens? That damn Red Ryder BB gun.
I would like to thank the following folks for donating to my Patreon. The channel would be nowhere without loyal viewers like you, and your continued support is greatly appreciated. If any of you would also like to donate to the channel, follow the link to my Patreon at the end of the vid, or the description. Thanks again from your old pal, Dr. Wolfula.
What's this? Well, that's the number at the sorority house.
Fellatio?
Yeah, it's a new exchange.